new kind of video today. Some thoughts I've been having. I've got 2 boxes of Arcane Unlimited to open, leftovers from a stream. We didn't hit anything good in the other 2 boxes. I think we hit a Command and Conquer, so maybe there's a legendary in one of these. I want to do a new player guide. I don't know what the thumbnail, or sorry, the title is going to read, but this box, I'm going to try and talk to the new players, and the second box, I'm going to try and talk to the experienced players. Both around the topic of new players in the game. You'll see if you watch the video. But let's start here. I'm going to move this around so I can read my notes. Pack 1, 24 packs. Let's go. So, basically, the game's growing. We're seeing quite a bunch of new players around, and I think there's like some etiquette things or some ideas around new players that everyone should be aware of. But the first bit is going to be advice to new players. So first of all, when you're learning to play, ask questions. I think that's the easiest way to learn. And I'm talking about ask to read the card that you're not sure of. Ask the person in front of you, hey, what does your hero do? Like, run me through it. Give me a summary. You know, this stuff, it really helps. So ask questions. You'll find you'll go very slowly when you're asking questions. So try and evolve or progress to asking more efficient questions, like instead of reading the card. So a very common question even experienced players will ask is, does this have go again? Because that's important, meaning like, is this the last attack you're going to be making or not? And it'll change your decision. The follow-up question to that sometimes is, do you have a way to give this go again? So in Flesh and Blood, the boot slot in a lot of classes usually allows for go again. That's the big one. Also, there's on-hit effects that allow for go again. So if the attack doesn't hit, you don't get to do another action. And that's the other question I would learn to ask is there an on-hit effect? Because to be honest, you don't need to read most cards. Like, let's say Dash, for instance. You don't need to read most cards. Ooh, Art of War. We'll talk about Majestics in a moment. That's a very good hit. You don't need to read most of Dash's cards. You don't need to know what the card says, because as the blocking character, as the blocking player, or the defense, the player that's on the defensive, and you pretty much just need to know the raw damage number to make a decision about it. Okay, second point is learn to lose. Be prepared to lose. You'll lose a lot. It has a lot to do with your power level in the deck, which we'll get to, but the main thing is too, you're just going to make mistakes, especially in Blitz. It's quite punishing when you make a mistake. So just understand that you're going to lose, and then understand that you need to try and be improving every time you lose, or learning. And that's why you're asking questions. I used to like to ask if, hey, like, is there a specific thing I did completely wrong? I'll still ask that now if I feel like the player that beat me is much more experienced or knows their character, their hero a lot better than me. So that's something to think about. You can ask that question after the game. Like, Forked Lightnings are good. Is it good? I don't know if it's good anymore. But yes, if you got time after your round in an armory or something, ask, hey, was there one misplay I did that you remember that I could have avoided? Like, like into Dory, which is what I play, there's usually like one time the new player blocked incorrectly, so I sort of then and there try and explain it to them if they want to know. One thing again to be aware of is your card power levels. There's 3 rarities in the game, mostly, that'll go in your deck. Commons, rares, majestics, right? Commons are grey, rares are blue, and then majestics have the red M on the bottom. I won't get into specifics, but if there was a mathematical formula to make this game, which there's a rough one, a common is going to be something like a 0 for 4. A rare is going to be, let's say, a 0 for 4 with some more text on it. And a majestic is going to be a 0 for 4 with a better text on it, right? In essence, Majestics, you're locked to the pitch color because they're quite strong. They don't want you to have 9 Majestics in a deck, usually, of one certain type. Art of War is a good example. It's a very, very powerful card. It's locked to yellow pitch, and it's a Majestic, so it's also harder to get, like when you open packs. It has an inherent higher value. The reason that's important is if you're going to start and buy a pre-con, you're not going to see many Majestics, right? So your deck power level is already quite lower than someone who's been playing longer, has accumulated some Majestics. I think the way to upgrade your deck is actually in reverse. I think make sure you get all the rares and commons that you need for your deck first, then go into your class Majestics. So if you're playing Warrior, you'll find the Warrior-specific Majestics will be worth less than any generic Majestics that are in the deck. And that's a broad thing to keep in mind when you're playing or building a deck for Flesh and Blood, is generic Majestics are worth less because they're not interchangeable into other decks. So any class that uses, like Warrior is a good example. Warrior really only uses Warrior Majestics. You very rarely put non-Warrior cards in a Warrior deck. Makes it a cheaper starting deck for new players. While decks that use a lot of generics, trying to think of an example here. Let's say at this moment in time, Arachne has Assassin Majestic, but also it makes a lot of use of all the 2-cost generic Majestics like Erase Space and Command and Conquer. Then that will be an inherently more expensive deck. So keep that in mind. But I would just pick up all the right play pieces if you've decided on a deck. They're quicker and cheaper to get, and then invest in Command and Conquers or whatever else you need to finish out the deck. If you're at this point 100% sure you want to go on. Legendaries also I'd leave to last. They're quite expensive, but again, class-specific legendaries are usually cheaper than the generics, so they're usually easier to find and won't hurt the wallet as much. Last thing with the last like 6 packs or so, if you're a new player, practice good habits from the start. Once you learn mechanics like pitching, like passing priority, how to play reactions, do them correctly. Try not to shortcut too much. So show how much pitch you're floating. Pass priority, like if you've attacked and the other player has blocked. Like don't attack and then react straight away. Don't skip through steps. I think a lot of new players do that and they actually just misplay because they've seen experienced players skip ahead or shortcut, but they'll do it incorrectly. Try and just focus on playing the game correctly in the right phases, in the right steps. Play instants when you're supposed to play them, that kind of thing. A couple of broad tips while you're playing. Generally, block on hit effects. Don't block raw damage. I don't want to make this like a specific coachy type video. Generally speaking, block on hit effects. Whew. Stormstriders. I think this is like the second best legendary in Arcane Rising now, price-wise, but that's a nice hit to finish off the box. Especially when it comes to armor blocking, save it for on-hit effects. Save it for cards that say on-hit, draw a card. Save it for cards that say on-hit, discard a card. Save them for cards that say on-hit, destroy your arsenal. On-hit, go again. They're the type of effects you want to stop at all costs because they're very advantageous to your opponent, so save your armor for that. Block a lot when you're going second. If you're going second, if the other person won the dice roll and they're going first, pretend your hand is blank. Don't get over-invested. Yes, you pulled some of your best cards and it's like a crazy good combo that you're holding in hand. Don't get trapped into taking damage turn 1 when you don't have to. You get free cards at the end of your turn. Use that fact to save your life total. Especially most new players are playing Blitz. The game is too fast usually for you to see your whole deck, so just pretend you never drew those 4 cards because there's like 30 other cards in the deck you're probably not going to draw either, so just block. It's a big mistake I see new players do all the time is they take damage early because they look and they see that they've got a really good hand. You don't have a good hand. You have a card, you have a hand that blocks and that's all it does. That's how I like seeing my... And trust me, it's hard. Sometimes you look and you're like, this is the perfect hand. You have to block. I've lost many games as a new player not blocking turn 1. All right. This is for experienced players interacting with new players. Some of this stuff is going to be condescending and erroneous, but some of you deserve to hear it. So here we go. Ask their name when you pair into them. Some people have weird and wonderful names. don't get stuck into where people are from, nationality, and that. You can definitely ask them, hey, how do I pronounce your name? And gender specific, it can be tricky sometimes. Just refer to people as they, them, unless you're sure. And if you want to be sure, ask how they'd like to be referred to. But in most cases, you don't need to know all that. You just need to ask the first name and how to pronounce it if you're not sure. It does make people feel important when you take the effort to greet them. I know it's a casual game. You're there to win some cold foils, but it's not hard to take a second and be sociable while you're shuffling or whatever. Don't be condescending ever to a new player. If you have any ego or arrogance and you're a card game player, there's something like wrong with you. Like you're good at a fucking kids game. Just be nice. Don't be condescending. I think Flesh and Blood already has that attitude generally in the community. Even our pro players are very approachable and friendly and patient with new players. But it goes without saying, just don't be a fucking asshole. It affects you. Like even if the person in front of you you don't particularly like, if they're a new player, foil knock. They're growing the game. Them being at the store playing increases the value of your collection. It generally will also increase the prize pool at pro events. The bigger the game gets, the more players we have. Sort of, what is it? The rising tide raises all ships or whatever. Just don't be condescending. Don't teach mid game. Like if you're in the middle of a game, don't stop and teach someone. Be precise and specific. There's already some pressure on new players to. They'll go to time a lot and draw, so you don't need to like stop and explain everything. Just play. If they're misplaying, explain, hey, you can't actually play that because, like someone puts a defense reaction in front of Command and Conquer. You can explain that they're doing it wrong, but don't stop and teach them how to play their hero and stuff. That's not, just play. They're going to lose. They probably already know they're going to lose. Don't make it any more painful or embarrassing or stressful or anxiety inducing. Just play the game. Be polite, be courteous, be patient if they're playing slow. Your job is to play fast if you're experienced. But yeah, when they do ask questions, answer very directly and concisely. Give all the detail you can. So if they say, does this have go again? It's polite to go, no, but my refraction bolters are still up, so I could give them go again. Like that's just a nice thing to do to a new player who may not know what refraction bolters or Snapdragon Scalers says. Yeah, don't make smart-ass remarks like, block and find out or read the card. Like, just answer it. I've actually seen this in person with like two people have a mini argument because the person asked how much blood debt the opponent had, and the opponent's like, I don't need to tell you. It's like, okay, whether you need to tell him or not, it's a Blitz Armory. Fucking tell him. Anyway, I mentioned this before. Don't rush new players. If there's like a timed event and stuff, you can like gently remind someone, go, hey, we're at 20 life each and there's 10 minutes left. We will need to speed it up or we'll draw. You can say that, but don't tap on the table. Just don't be an asshole. There's many nice ways. Again, the easiest way to say is just a little bit of a time reminder for a new player is usually enough. Eighth of Flare Foil. So I like to remove legendary equipment if my opponent's playing something like a precon. Someone tweeted at me that they took my advice. They still won the game. That's sort of the point. It just slows down the game. If you're running like on Wario, Courage or Blade Hold, it's a very powerful card. It probably equates to... It's at minimum 6 free damage. It sometimes can mean a lot more than that. And you don't need it to beat a new player on a precon. So removing it slows the game down. It also like... puts you at an even keel with the opponent, and it gives them less things to have to think about. Like, if they don't see a Storm Striders, they don't have to ask what Storm Striders does. It's less info they have to worry about. They can just play the cards that you play. They don't have to think about your equipment board state. Offer to switch decks with opponents. If someone's like, oh, wow, you play Dash. Can I have a look? Like, I've always wanted to play Dash. I just bought this Bolton at the counter, but this is the deck I want to build. If you're comfortable, loan them the deck. Like, go, hey, how about I play Bolton, you play Dash? Look, you might lose that round because your Dash deck is probably better, but what you'll probably gain is a Dash main in your locals. You know what I mean? Someone that you'll be able to talk to and build decks with and bounce ideas off eventually. So I've done this. If someone's fascinated with Dorinthia, I'm like, look, here you go. Here's all my gold foils. Look after them. And, you know, they're playing in front of me, so I'm not too worried. They're not burrowing the deck for the whole event. It's just one round. And most times, you're basically recruiting a new Dory player. That's basically what you end up doing. By letting them play your deck with all your legendaries and majestics. And for any of you out there that, oh no, I don't want people touching my deck, like, trust me, my deck's worth more than yours. I still let people touch it. Like, you know, unless they absolutely look grubby or there's some reason you don't want to, but it's still a choice. I think it does help. Make sure you invite people to the next event. The social aspect of gaming is really important. I think that's why most people turn up to events in the first place. So keep it social. This box was atrocious. Invite them to the next event. Try and remember their name, that kind of thing. It's pretty big. I like giving away my prize packs. I don't usually take them, especially like the amount of stuff I open. I generally don't need any more packs. Dynasty, Uprising is obviously always the chance of hitting like a big lottery card, but handing someone a prize pack who's lost every round in an armory, but they get an extra few prize packs is a pretty feels-good moment. They still feel like they walked away with something. I extend that to promos, playmats, especially if the person's like, I'm going to play Icelander. Well, fuck, if it's an Icelander playmat and I have no intention of playing Icelander, it seems really dumb for me to keep it or sell it. Like, again, that person will probably only play Icelander after that if you give it to them. That might be a good or bad thing, I don't know. Offer to stay back or come in early to the next event. If someone really wants some tips, that's the time to go a bit slower. But my opinion and my advice is don't make it a coaching session where you talk. Just play reps. Just give them the opportunity to play 10 games. Happened to a new player locally to us. He played like 5 games into a. He's on Ira, I believe. The opponent was on Kano. He won half the games because the Kano was like gold fishing and trying to do his brainstorm combo, I think, and the new Ira player got to actually win a few games. Even though it's not an armory, it feels good because they, you know, then it's going to take 3 events sometimes to get to 10 games, or you can play 10 games quickly after or before an event, and rather than talk, just play as quick as possible. There's no stakes, which means a new player will usually play quicker as well. There's less pressure, and they'll just get to experience the game, and they'll get better because they put some reps into their own deck. They have to read their cards less, and they actually stop reading your cards because now they remember them. So offer to do that if you can. And that's the last thing would be just encourage players that are new. So if they block correctly, like especially if they can block a pummel because you floated 2, or if they did their combo properly, like they blocked with their armor on one turn and then they used the armor on the next turn, point that out and explain that was a really good decision. Again, especially in Blitz, those decisions are super pivotal. So, but that's it. That's my video. We hit a legendary, not bad. I just wanted to see what was left in these boxes. But all in all, guys, yeah, new players are sort of the catalyst for the game growing. It won't grow off the backs of all the existing players, and there's always an attrition rate. New people have babies, get married, move houses, move to areas with no flesh and blood. So the stream in new players is important, and I think you should treat them as such, that they're important. But anyway, that's the video. Subscribe if you're still here, and I'll see you on the next one.